Alright, and welcome back to episode 11. This is the Battle of Malvern Hill on Legendary difficulty for the Union campaign. As you can see, I went ahead and picked up all of the good officers, weapons, artillery that we need, or not so that we need, but that we can get from this phase. This is one of the only phases where a grand battle follows a previous battle, so we basically saved some money from last time, spent all the money we gained, and then had to sell a little bit to get everything that we need. Also spent some reputation points here to pick up some Harps of 55s as they're a relatively good deal. And went ahead and used all of our good artillery to upgrade the units that we have. So we're going to take essentially the same army we had in the previous battle and bring them into this battle. We have upgraded our artillery in some cases, and we've given our units some better rifles. I think nobody has Springfields anymore, which is great. Everyone's got a rifle. Even if some of those units in the bottom have Tylers are still pretty good. So I'm going to fast forward a lot of this early section, as I pretty much like to skip this early phase of the battle. I don't particularly love this defensive position that the game gives you. The enemy tends to bring a lot of infantry, and they tend to get a good surround, and it's difficult to extract your troops out. My units are already getting to 2 stars. We have good weapons now. If this was a battle that was a little bit earlier in the campaign, I might be willing to sit this out. But right now, I'm not really feeling like taking a bunch of losses on this battle, and our goal is to get to 10 KDR anyway. We're not actually going to get that on this battle, but we're going to get as close as we can. This is another one of those battles that ends, I think a little bit too soon. It's kind of frustrating. I wish I had an extra 2 or 3 hours. So I'm just using my general here to get vision so I can see where they're going for as long as I can. There's a nice kind of spot here in the south corner that I've found that you can still get that vision spot, but the enemy can't necessarily see you. So the map opens up now, and I've got a lot of artillery back here in my second line, and that's going to kind of be the way that I'm going to hold this line. Is I'm going to have basically all the artillery in the world holding this line, and I'm going to have this infantry here that I've kind of stored off to the left. They're going to sneak around this wood line, allow all the infantry to come forward, and then they are going to take up a position behind and take this flag and effectively get a surround on the enemy. This position's a little bit dicey the way that I've done it. I brought a lot of artillery early. We're going to have our infantry come over here to the left. He tends to be a little bit more aggressive here on this left side of the field. And hopefully our supporting units here, which are joining now, will make it in time that we can hold this shallow river line here. It's a little bit dicey as he does get pretty close, and he is very charge happy. I mean, this is legendary difficulty, but we just pull it off. So I think, maybe next time it might make sense to reorganize the army before this battle to get 1 or 2 more infantry to help hold this line in the south. Maybe let the artillery rather join a little bit later. But we end up making it work. We don't let him cross the river line or do any damage to our artillery. So I just have 2 infantry units here to sort of guard this shallow crossing here, as he likes to cross there, just to kind of dissuade him. We want to keep him sort of centered here. And the timing here is a little bit tricky, as I don't want to engage his infantry up north when my units move in from behind, but I do want to try to catch his artillery, as we don't even have enough time to do counter battery fire on this mission. To sort of slowly whittle down his artillery with our long-range artillery. So we're going to try to catch his artillery with our infantry. And that's kind of a timing push just from knowing this mission. I'm going to go ahead and use my cavalry here to try to bait out his charge meters. I don't want him charging into my artillery. If he starts charging at one of my artillery units, this mission's done, as he's just going to either come right up to that artillery unit and, open a volley on it, or get into melee with my artillery, and that's going to, be pretty disastrous. All this artillery here is pretty valuable, so I'm trying to collect his charge meters and then kind of continue to funnel them over here to the left where I have some infantry set up in not great defensive position. I mean, these fields offer some cover. It's not the best cover in the world, but some cover, and he'll have to give his flanks to my units, which are incoming, and my artillery pieces, which I have set up. And I'm a little bit nervous that he's going to cross here on the far right. There's another shallows over here. But I've found that you can generally take your last group of reinforcements and have them, at least one of those units, defend that shallow, as he tends to be a little bit passive with that crossing. So now that I've got my infantry coming in here online, I'm going to send this cavalry unit rather around. Here comes our last reinforcements. I just cut some footage there with the new phase coming in, and those infantry units joining the battle. This is going to be their whole army, and if you don't know about this battle, you essentially get everyone from your 6 divisions that you have, except for the last unit in your, what would be your 6th division. So in this case, that's that skirmisher unit that we made for the previous battle. He's not going to join this one, but that's okay. You don't really have a ton of time or extra ability to micro here on this mission, as we're already pretty taxed. So the loss of one skirmisher unit isn't too bad. Or I shouldn't say loss, but the lack of, availability of one skirmisher unit is pretty okay. And we're just trying to keep him from crossing over this shallow line here. We want to keep him kind of boxed up. Again, we're not going to be able to get him on. It looks like I forgot to move this one infantry, so he's going to join a little bit late. That's too bad, but get him moving now. Sped up that footage just because it's not very interesting to watch me draw lines on the map. And yeah, we're making this maneuver now, as I think this is about the right time. He tends to move a ton of his artillery right through these shallows right around this time. So if we can get some infantry right there, we can catch a lot of that artillery in the water, limbered up, not firing back. Unfortunately, I have this 24-pounder a little bit too close, so he's taking some damage. Luckily, it isn't enough to, he hasn't lost a gun yet, so we're not panicking just yet, but hopefully we can get this unit to back up. And just as soon as we get him, flashing white, another unit starts charging, so I just need to give up and get this 24-pounder out of here, back up, have this other infantry unit come online. And now that I have this infantry unit over here on the right, I can finally get my general moving, have him come join the center, make sure none of my troops are getting morale shocked. But yeah, overall this is going pretty much exactly like we want. We want, to hold this line in the south and then just envelop him from the north. So I'm a little bit worried here as I catch some of his infantry. Now his infantry is kind of on rails here, so he doesn't actually charge after my infantry, but I was just kind of worried that he might, charge after my infantry here, and I really don't want to engage infantry here. So unfortunately that means when I turn this infantry around, he takes a lot of artillery in the back. Ultimately, he only takes about 50 casualties, a lot less than ideal, but that does make him rout, taking that damage to the back, so I'm going to need to send my initial general over there to get him back in the battle. So some slight, imperfections there, but ultimately it's not too much damage, as I think all the artillery that he brings to this battle is Napoleon's, so they're not terribly effective at long range, and they're not terribly useful to us. We're going to use them for some of our newer brigades, especially in the upcoming battles, but I was kind of hoping for some better artillery, even maybe some 10-pounders and 3-inch ordnance, but what can you do? The AI decided to bring all Napoleons, or at least that's the only ones that I was able to capture. So this is kind of I've been thinking about this a lot, but your enemy can kind of get 3 things on the off battles. It's armory, training, or manpower. For training, obviously it's ideal if they don't get training, but I kind of treat it like it's legendary difficulty. I'm expecting to be facing 3-star units this whole game. You know, you start seeing 3-star units in your first or second battle, it's just kind of a fact of life. So I genuinely don't pay too much attention to the enemy's training. The enemy's armory, though, is one of those funny things where, on the one hand, yes, it's good that the enemy doesn't have good weapons. That means that you are, you know, not getting hit with as dangerous of weapons. But on the other hand, it means you're not capturing as good of weapons either. So I'm almost like, do I want the enemy to have better weapons? Maybe I do. You know, like maybe it's better if the enemy gets some good armory values, or armory rolls, I should say, because, you know, getting some good artillery early in this campaign is completely helpful. He is actually going to have, I think he ends up bringing a ton of harps to this battle as well, which, I mean, that's pretty much my favorite rifle, and especially in this early phase of the game, so I'm definitely not going to complain about that. So we've gone ahead and captured this flag up here. I've got my infantry here in this wood line, so yes, he's able to shoot him with his artillery, but you know, we're in decent cover. We're not terribly close. We are taking hits, but we're dealing hits back to his artillery, and his artillery is going to stop firing back here pretty soon because they're all going to be routing. So, and you know, now all he has is just big, massive infantry in the middle, and we're going to bring, you know, all of our artillery is now coming online here in the south. He's not going to be able to charge into this. You know, we don't necessarily have good cover or hill advantage, but we do have, you know, the shallows advantage. This infantry unit here gets kind of stuck, so I'm worried he might, you know, come in here and hit this unit in the flank. So I have this unit kind of watching this crossing. That's not necessarily totally necessary, as he doesn't really try to push it, but still good for peace of mind. I wouldn't want this battle to be undone by some unit just crossing over here. So yeah, I'm just trying to maneuver this infantry so that they're in good cover. They can fire on his artillery, and as long as we're shooting at his artillery, they're not reloading. They're not firing at our units, and we can hopefully capture all of his artillery, which would be great. I'm also sending my cavalry up north. I don't know if that was too visible, but I'm sending my artillery up north to kind of capture his supply wagons, which join late. He brings a ton of supply to this mission. He always kind of does, so it's worth it to try to capture some of them, as you know, that's just free money, and that also adds to our totals there at the end. You know, as we do count captures, even the supply wagon captures us, you know, towards the K value in our KDR. So there's one. That one's pretty much full. Just getting my general moving here. Unfortunately, my infantry here gets a little bit into melee, and melee against artillery, it seems to be really ineffective. They kind of get stuck on one gun. I really don't want to get stuck into melee while his enemy artillery is bearing down on me, so I'm really trying to negotiate this troop out of that, trying to back him up, trying to hit fallback, you know, anything I can do to get him kind of unstuck. Because our infantry is actually a lot more effective shooting as artillery than it is, you know, just getting into these weird melees where it tires him out. I mean, he's at 0 condition, so he's not even probably doing any damage in melee. So yeah, we're just kind of pushing his artillery out. He's down to these last 2 guns, and now it's just this big massive infantry here in the middle. Unfortunately, we only have an hour and a half left, so I know I've tried this mission a lot of times, and I've gotten into similar positions to this. You can be really aggressive here in the north and push down. The problem is that as soon as you get out of this kind of decent cover here in the north, he really starts to push back, and there isn't a good defensive spot for your infantry here in the north to take up if you're pushing his infantry from the north, you know, pushing south, that is. So unfortunately, this is one of those where, and even if you do, I guess the point I'm trying to make is, even if you do push south, you just don't have enough time in this mission to get them all. He has a lot of infantry there, and you're only able to pull the trigger on your guns so fast, and all of his units aren't going to be always routing, especially when he has that much. Ideal, if we had more time, we'd sit here, kind of surround him. He would charge into my lines kind of piecemeal. My artillery would be tearing into him, and we'd slowly whittle him down to the point where we could actually get a full surround and take him out. But unfortunately, that's just not in the cards. This mission doesn't last long enough, so we're going to do as much damage as we can, and go ahead and take that into the next battles. The next battles that we have are two side battles which aren't too bad. So we're not terribly worried about his manpower values. And his manpower values are actually going to be pretty reasonable, so it's not too much of a problem. But then the next grand battle is Second Bull Run, and Second Bull Run is one of those battles where we are able to get them all. We really have plenty of time in that battle, so you can sit there with your long-range artillery and really, take them all the way down. Unfortunately here, my artillery unit, or my cavalry unit rather, I just don't micro them very well, and it's kind of one of the big mistakes I make. I'm really busy trying to keep this infantry in line, try to address any of his charges that he's doing, and unfortunately I could have very easily kept this artillery unit here in the kind of like that wood line there to the right. I could have kept them chain routed, but unfortunately I don't micro him very well, and I don't get him into a good hold position where he can just sit there and do damage. So he unfortunately is able to rally, get that artillery unit back online, and then when I'm trying to take him out, he does a lot of damage to my cavalry. So had I been a little bit better there, I could have potentially saved some casualties on my artillery. We would have done a little bit better. That one's on me. Can't always be perfect in these battles. There's always room for improvement. That's a big spot I really could improve on, is my micro on some of these auxiliary units just really leaves something to be desired. And it feels like it's always my cavalry unit taking the punishment. So he comes charging in over here. He gets a big volley off on my 2nd Division A Brigade. Kind of unfortunate, but we're able to hit him with 2 different volleys. And I'm just sending this infantry unit here to that vision marker to make sure that I've got all of his units here in the north. I can see that one artillery unit, but I just want to make sure I've gotten them all. But yeah, other than that, I feel like this is going pretty well. We have his infantry all bottled up. We just need to make sure he doesn't all charge in one direction and escape. But like I said, we're pretty well hunkered in here in the north. We've got all the artillery in the world down here in the south, so he's kind of all gathering along this shallow marker here in the center. Unfortunately, this unit here kind of retreats in an odd direction. That's my fault. I kind of opened up that pathway to that river crossing, I guess you could say, but we can actually live with that, as that unit really doesn't rejoin the battle. I am afraid he is, so I'm going to sit there and kind of address him and leave one of my infantry units turn there so I can quickly, shoot him if he decides to cross. But he doesn't actually rejoin the battle, so ultimately isn't the end of the world. We aren't going to be able to get all these guys in the center anyway. Otherwise, we would have probably would have been a mistake to let that guy go. So yeah, we're just trying to avoid, taking one-on-one trades. We really want to get him into positions where he's getting shot at by 2 or more units, by artillery, by our, sniper unit, whatever. And sometimes this battle's a little bit hard. It's easier for me to tell kind of like east-west versus north-south when units are in range, what their kind of cone is. It's the way that the whatever you call it, perspective works in this game. A lot of times, north-south, it looks like a unit's in range, and then they're not, or they are, et cetera, especially when you bring this kind of incline in here into it. So yeah, here it is. My cavalry unit just runs literally all the way back to the other side of the map. It's really frustrating. Now he's, back to not routing, so he's going to be loading. He's going to potentially be in position to fire on my cavalry when he comes back. And he's really close to shattering. He's just 2 or 3 more volleys. Really frustrating. I could have definitely managed that better if I just gave it a little bit more time, but that's what kind of happens on these grand battles. Sometimes it's really hard to get all these units going. I mean, here, look at this. This infantry unit, they're both supposed to be in the woods, but one unit slightly clipped the other, so the other, marched all the way out of the woods. Just great. These little bugs in the game, you have to kind of manage them, but... So I'm just trying to get this cavalry unit to kind of go around his flank so that he can, hit the enemy artillery but not take shots back in return. He's charging me in the woods here in the north, which is great. It's, if any of our units are going to get charged, I'm fine with the ones in the woods getting charged. They can back up. They'll still be in cover, Yeah, this 3-star artillery man can just take volley after volley, and even though he was routing only a minute ago, he's, apparently perfectly happy to sit there and take it, so kind of frustrating. I'm going to go ahead and try to, I'm kind of starting to think here maybe he's not going to come, but I'm going to send this infantry unit over here to hopefully keep that unit across the river, from crossing again, because I don't want him to, sort of compromise this position that we've set up. If he comes from behind, he could potentially flank our troops, which could really ruin our day. See, that's what I mean. Like, I didn't anticipate that unit there could hit, second day there, but he could. It's just his kind of north-south angles are a little bit harder to read. So I kind of think about getting this artillery moved over. I don't think I'd quite appreciated the fact that there's only, here's our artillery. Here's our cavalry again, just retreating across the map. Very frustrating. If you can get into a good position, you can actually just tell your, skirmisher cav to hold position, and that will usually do it, but I just couldn't quite get them into a good position. I was always off to micro somewhere else, and ultimately paying the price for it, but what can you do? So this guy's charging in now. We're going to try to hit him in the flanks and get him to stop and bang, get him to rout, which is great. That's exactly what we want. Our artillery here, these are only the 24 pounders that I have, or the 12 pounders rather. But I'm, trying to get any and all artillery kind of over here to the left, because I feel like he's might push me a little bit there, but in the end he kind of ends up pushing here in the middle more, so might have been better just to not move that artillery and leave it there, just be doing damage. But all in all, we still got a lot of artillery here, so we're not too worried about it. Yeah, I think this is probably the first major battle that I don't really enjoy playing. I don't hate it. It's not like a super long one. It's not a super difficult one, but just the fact that you get such a short timer and you get kind of these mediocre defensive positions, it just means that it's one I never look forward to this one. I'm always trying to get past this one. I don't particularly love, even though I get really good results on it, I also don't particularly love Second Bull Run because it's such a long and slow and grindy battle. This is kind of one of those, the mid-section in the Union campaign isn't necessarily my favorite, and here it is, our artillery's taking some hits and run halfway across the map, which is kind of frustrating. But I think after Second Bull Run, I think this campaign really hits its stride. There's some of my favorite missions in the campaign fall specifically between Stones River and Gettysburg. I think that's just a really fun part of the campaign. You have all these weapons, the missions are pretty varied. Yeah, just, we're kind of in the middle, frustrating part of the campaign. But luckily, I've played these missions enough, so I know kind of what I'm in for. And look, it's just, oh gosh, this is so frustrating. This cavalry unit should be on 4 casualties, but now it's on 86. I mean, that's just my mistake. Should not have, ignored this unit so much. I should have probably babysat it a little bit more. I should have got him in a good position and just had him sit there, but what can you do? Hindsight 2020, always, remember that kind of stuff. There's always like one unit you just manage to take too many casualties on. Whenever you fight these battles, you kind of look back and say, well, I could have done better there, but that's the nature of the game. So far, we've done a pretty good job of keeping our sniper unit intact without taking too much damage, so, we'll take what we can get. And there we go. That's the end of the battle. Unfortunately, we run out of time. This is going to be the first battle, and hopefully the only battle where we don't hit a 10 KDR, but it's still pretty high. It's higher than 7.5, so we're pretty happy with it. I'll also note this is the first battle where we are taking the discount that medicine gives and using that in our calculation. What I've actually done is I've gone in and actually counted in the post-battle screen the amount of troops that we get back and checked that against the medicine value that I calculate, and usually it's off by only one. So, and yeah, you can see here we capture a ton of harps. We only lose one officer. We get a lot of promotions. We capture some Napoleons, and yeah. So that was the 11th battle in our series. I want to thank everyone for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks so much. Bye.